So, as you will realize, perhaps if you look into my background, I'm a great fan, love Hong Kong very much, spent 3 very, very happy years here learning Mandarin back in the 1960s, and have taken a very close interest in it since. When I became leader of the Liberal Democrats, I flew out to Hong Kong, marched in the street demonstrations at Tiananmen, and then you may recall I was the person who argued the case for Hong Kong passport. So this is a visit which you might call a fact-finding visit. I want to bring us up to date about what's going on. I was intending to come here anyway fairly soon, but I then saw this thing where Mr. Ben Rogers was banned from coming, and I thought it's time I got out and heard some of the voices. So I'm not really able to give you, I think, very much just at the moment. I want to hear some other voices. I'll be meeting with all the parties tomorrow, including some of the young activists. I'll be meeting obviously the President today. I asked the Chief Executive if I could meet her, but she's obviously very busy, and I understand that she's not able to do that. So it's a fact-finding visit. I think I would say only 3 very brief things at this stage. I may have more to say when I've heard other points of view. The first is that Hong Kong is a very special place, I know that, and its special status, the culture of Hong Kong, this business of being proudly Chinese but also being part of a democratic culture is absolutely crucial. I think it's valuable to the world as a model about how you can have one country, 2 systems. I think that was a brilliant idea. I think it's very valuable to China, and I think it's also valuable to Britain, and therefore we should act in a way which is far-sighted to preserve that quality. Is it under threat at the moment? No, I don't think it is, but I think we have to be very aware of what's happening. You can answer some questions, but the center of it, it seems to me, of that democratic style of culture is the rule of law. I've always believed that that is the primary gift which perhaps the British, whose legacy here I have to say is not blameless, have left behind, and that I think is really important. If the rule of law goes or is damaged, and I'm not saying it is, but we need to keep an eye on that, then I think we're in trouble. Second point I want to make is that, as you will see from the speech I'll make tomorrow, China is now claiming superpower status, and we understand that, and she's certainly an economic superpower, but I think China, so far as I have seen her, wishes to be a good world citizen, wishes to adhere to the law, wants to be seen to do that. And I think, therefore, that the joint agreement and the basic law are now, of course, enshrined in international treaty, and it is up to all to make sure that they preserve that and protect it. And the third point I want to make is that the British government has a duty here too. Britain, sadly, is obsessed with Brexit at the moment, and but you know, this is our engagement. It was, I think, John Major, the British Prime Minister, who said to the people of Hong Kong, "You'll never walk alone," and it would be quite shocking. Chris Patten has said Britain risks selling her honour if, in order to get a trade deal we're all desperate to get, Britain forgets her obligations in Hong Kong. And in that sense, the government, I think, has a duty to play, and I will be ensuring I can do everything they can to press them to do that. We'll be establishing in the House of Commons, in Parliament, a Hong Kong Watch, which will be, what's it going to be? A referee that blows the whistle when we think the laws have been broken. We think it's important. It's not something which anybody needs to be frightened of. We will act as a lobbying system on the government, and we'll act, we hope, as a bystander who wishes Hong Kong well, wishes the agreement well, who's prepared to blow the whistle when we believe that the rules are being broken or in danger of being broken. That's about all I need to say, really. Anybody want to ask me any questions?
So could you share with us what did you discuss with the President of the Legislative?
Well, we discussed almost everything you'd imagine we would discuss. So we discussed co-location, we discussed the disqualifications and the penalties that have been placed on those who have been disqualified, I think, today, as it happens. We discussed Article 23. What else did we discuss? We discussed, of course, the democracy movement and what's been going on. We discussed the question of what the President would call filibustering. I reminded the President that the use of time is the opposition's only weapon in a democracy. So all of those issues which, you know, are in the common domain we discussed.
About the penalties, do you think it was fair to have a kind of a retrospective effect in terms of, like, they were disqualified, but they actually worked here for like a full year?
Well, look, this is not an issue at present. I think it's helpful for me to give a judgment, as I understand it, but I want to hear other views first. As I understand it, that was a requirement under the court judgment. The court judgment made it clear that the disqualification date was backdated to the time when they made the oath. And I need to check this, but did the government did the president have any room for manoeuvre in this? Was it a choice of his, or was it imposed by the court judgment? I need to take some other advice on that before I have a properly balanced opinion.
So since the pressure that you get from the president was that his hands were tied on this matter,
I asked the president the question directly. I'd rather not go into too much of the detail. The impression I have is that this has been laid down by the court, but I will want to take a look at that. I know very well in complex situations like this, there's always another side to the story. There is a habit of people from far away to descend in a complex situation like this and think they know the answer, and I just want to find out. I mean, I suspect I know probably more about Hong Kong than most members of Parliament, but nevertheless I know that issues can be complex, and I'd like to hear both sides of the story. Sorry?
How did the president reply on the issues you mentioned?
I really don't want to go into a blow-by-blow discussion with the president. If you'll excuse me, at this stage, I don't think it's fair. We had a private conversation. I've told you the issues we discussed. You can imagine pretty well where I'm coming from as a Liberal and a Democrat. But I'd like to hear views from others before we discuss. I don't think I want to go into the blow-by-blow discussions. I'd rather just wait until I've formed an opinion which is balanced, and then I'll tell you then. Is that all right? Any others, gentlemen and ladies?
You've just talked about the rule of law in Hong Kong. What do you make of the status of rule of law in Hong Kong? Is it deteriorating?
Look, I want to keep an eye on this. There is a case being made by some that there is pressure on the independence of the judiciary. This is a very crucial thing. I speak to lawyers, including lawyers of a very senior nature, international lawyers engaged in Hong Kong. They assure me that is not the case. There is a second question that has to be answered as to whether or not the Ministry of Justice, which is supposed to be independent in the legal process, is fully independent in that process. But again, I think it's an area, let me say, it's an area that I think needs to be carefully watched. If this is the essential jewel at the heart of the Hong Kong status, the rule of law, then being constantly aware, constantly vigilant about this, I think is a really important thing to do. And that's in a sense what Hong Kong Watch will do. All right?
You talk about you're going to meet some of the activists tomorrow. Does it include Joshua and Alex and Nathan Beck? And what do you expect to talk about with them?
The same subjects. The answer is yes, but the same subjects. Yes. Listen, I met them before. I wouldn't come to Hong Kong without seeing them. Yes, I think it's very important. I hear all sides in this, so I will be meeting them tomorrow, yes.
So have you ever worried that you may not be able to enter Hong Kong after what happened
No,
No,
I don't. No, I really don't. I mean, no.
What do you make of what Joshua's been doing? Joshua?
You'll forgive me if I wait until afterwards. I mean, this is everybody's working in a very difficult situation here. I want to hear their views before I make a pronouncement on that.
Okay.
All right.
If you don't mind, like the exact topics that you bring up with the three student performances.
I'll be talking about all of those things and the things they want to talk to me about. Such as the disqualification, such as the time limit, such as Article 23, such as co-location, the same things as I talked. Remember, I've come here on a fact-finding visit. It's really important to put that down. So I want to hear both sides, all sides, about the same basic issues. Won't be any different. Is that okay, Lucy? Anything else? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.